Hi everyone, this is Dr. Catherine Kelly. I'm talking to you today a little bit of an awakening. Now, this is something I experience almost every day. A lot of the people I work with experience this, but a lot of people don't understand what an awakening is. And so I want to spend a little time explaining that because, I think most people think it's going to be some sort of boom, explosive awakening. And many times it is. But as long as we are practicing what I call conscious evolution, we are experiencing awakening every day if we are having aha moments, if we were connecting dots together, if we were paying attention to something that made meaning for us. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that we might awaken. Now, for those of you who follow my newsletter, you know that I laid out several of the ways, five of the ways that primary ways that we awaken. And we can have a personality awakening, we can have a spiritual awakening, we can have an awakening really from anything, but there's different contexts to how we have awakenings. And for those of you who want to read more about that, go to my website at www.Dr.KatherineT.Kelly.com, look on my blog page, and it's the August 1st posting. So you will be able to read more about that. But I really want to talk to you just from a existential perspective of how to perceive, how to acknowledge, how to pinpoint if you're actually having an awakening. Now, again, there are lots of awakenings because sometimes they do tend to happen when something challenging is happening in our lives. So, for instance, I think, frankly, something like a midlife crisis is a form of awakening because people become aware of a new level of consciousness. They start becoming more discerning. They start evaluating their lives differently. So that is a form of an awakening. But really, anything that shifts our awareness, anything that is that I call it cracking a seal, something that is cracking a seal for us that we look at life in a different way. We perceive life in a more open way, a more expansive way. And that's really the hallmark of whether or not you're having an awakening is, are you expanding the way you think? Is there something bigger that you've become aware of? Are you able to widen your lens in a way that you see things in a bigger way, but a more specific or a more in tune kind of way? Now, I chose this background, on purpose because of the fact that we can have, you see these little lines, and to me, we can have awakenings every day, like I said, or we can have these really big awakenings of literally when it feels like the sun comes up and we have a whole new way of looking at life. So, I differentiate between the difference between what I call a macro awakening and a micro awakening. Now, a macro awakening for us is something that literally kind of just jolts us and it creates something, this new awareness that we are shocked by, we are jolted by. It could be one of those things where we never thought we'd believe a certain thing. It could be something that we now suddenly understand, something we've been resisting for a long time. Or it could be something that just was never in our consciousness to begin with. And suddenly, boom, it's there and you can't deny it. Now, there are lots and lots of authors out there that talk about near-death experiences who would have never, ever believed that there was something beyond the science of the body dying and that was it until they had a near-death experience themselves. And a near-death experience is something where basically your soul leaves your body and can see what is happening around you, even though your body is unconscious, your body's not functioning. You might even see yourself hovering over your body as the medical practitioners are working on you. I've heard people talk about near-death experiences when they've had an accident and they could see themselves floating above the car as the emergency workers got there. And they went and had, basically a conversation with their spirit team to say, wow, am I coming back or am I leaving? And so there are lots of ways to have spiritual awakenings. Near-death experiences are just one of them. Early on in my life, I started hearing these messages coming through, and I kind of just denied them, ignored them until some things really started happening that were very poignant, and the messages were pointed at me, meaning, okay, this is what you have to do. This is what you have to experience. This is what's coming next. And it's one of those things where, at the time, I didn't think I was crazy, but I just didn't know to believe in a lot of the things that were coming until I couldn't deny it any longer. And I have many of these experiences I could share with people. So that was an awakening for me. And I'm also going to share that very difficult experiences of the human condition can be forms of awakenings. So, for instance, when I went away to grad school, that wasn't really the awakening. I felt like that was what I was supposed to do. It wasn't until I left a very challenging marriage that I was jolted. I was confronted with really having to look at so much in my life for the reason that I was leaving the marriage, for the religion. Grew up Catholic. Grew up to believe you don't leave marriages, and yet I had to. I was so confronted with so many layers of my life that I had to basically look at differently. That it was a form of awakening because it was really breaking through a lot of old thoughts that just did not work, and in retrospect, they didn't even make sense. And so it was one of those things where it was a very, very difficult part of my life. And I was 27 at the time that I left that marriage. And I had only been in marriage 2 years. So that was one of those things where, of course, you question, gosh, am I doing the wrong thing? Am I just, not putting enough energy into it? But after three marital therapists and a husband who could not tell the truth to save his life, I realized, no, this is not me. So that was an awakening to realize not only was I breaking through all these barriers of these thoughts and these belief systems and these ideas of who I was and who I was supposed to be, but I was breaking through a lot of old kinds of pleasing behaviors, things that I realized, wow, I was putting up with too much for too long. There were all of these things that were happening that I became aware of. So life crisis can actually be a form of a spiritual awakening because from that point on, my world expanded to the point where I am now, where I really understand the human condition and understand how the soul is part of this. And for me, I had to go through the challenges of the human condition to understand the soul. That may not be the case for everybody, but it is a form of awakening. It's a form of when we go through difficult times, it usually does crack some major seals. Sometimes it's concrete that we're cracking through to come into a different understanding. I have clients who have had very difficult experiences in churches, and I call it church hurt, that basically churches are supposed to be the places where you gain comfort, where you gain support. And yet sometimes churches are not the places that you gain that support. Sometimes those churches are the ones that deny you of whatever it is that you need to be. Um, I've had people kicked out of churches because of lifestyle choices, and so they had to confront themselves with that whole idea of, wow, my beliefs of spirit, my beliefs of God, my beliefs of religion are now being crumbled, and what do I do with this? So that's another form of awakening, and many of those people have come into a whole new awareness and said that it wasn't until they had those difficult experiences in churches, meaning the church hurt or the God trauma, I call it either one, that they opened up to the soul. They opened up to realizing that there's something beyond those religions for them. Now, that's not the case for everybody. Every day we can have an awakening. We can have one of these little micro awakenings in these little levels, because as we put two and two together, as we go, wow, okay, that is how I developed that behavior, or that is how I was wounded at a very deep level, but I didn't realize that's when it happened way, way, way back. So whenever we put two and two together, it's a form of an awakening. And the whole point of me doing this video is to help people realize that as part of our conscious evolution, every step of the way adds up to the wholeness of who we are. And if we take into account all of these little micro awakenings and then the big awakenings, these like, wow, that really changed my world, that changed my mind, and realize that it is all part of our conscious evolution, is all part of becoming who we are so that we can really evolve into the souls we're supposed to be. And so we have to kind of think about, we don't have to have some astronomical awakening. Most people do in one way or another, but they don't perceive them to be an awakening. They perceive them to be a challenge of the human condition. But if we can widen the lens and realize that those difficulties are part of expanding who we are, developing who we are, seasoning who we are, it all adds up. So, we wouldn't be the same person without those experiences. And certainly we would not be the same soul without those experiences. Now, about almost exactly 2 years ago, I was going through this evaluation of everything in my life. Now, I didn't ask for it, but that's what started happening. And every aspect of my life, it was like turning over every stone of my life and looking at it and exploring, wow, okay, that's how this all came together. It was almost like looking back, not intentionally, these memories were just coming to me kind of in this rapid succession that you see here, but these memories of all of these different things in my life were coming together for me to realize how I ended up where I ended up and why I went through certain things, why I met certain people, why certain people challenged my life, why certain aspects of my life were challenging. And so it was almost doing that life review that they say your life flashes before your eyes when you're about to die. Well, I was watching all of these things come together, and I already knew how some of them fit together. But just looking at how this rapid succession of experiences happened for me really deepened my understanding of who I am, expanded my understanding of who I am, and actually solidified a whole lot of things for me. It really helped me realize that the universe really does have my back at all times. It also helped me realize, nothing matters and yet everything matters. I just went through these very profound experiences at the time. All of them were awakenings. All of them were pieces of the puzzle, pieces of my soul's puzzle that came together to help me understand myself more. And so this is why paying attention to your awakenings, acknowledging that you're having an awakening, even being curious about, wow, am I having an awakening? And also not denying what you were learning and how it is expanding you. All of that gets integrated into you as well, as long as you receive it, as long as you expand that awareness and allow that to integrate into you to see, oh, this is my soul's path. So this is the important part about awakenings, is not only to have all these, pay attention to all these little ones, but to look at these big ones that happen too and pull it all together. Because at the end of your life, you're going to feel like your life is richer. You're going to feel like, well, even right now, your life is going to feel richer if you start to look at those micro awakenings and those macro awakenings and start to pull them together to understand what makes you you. That is the development of the soul right there. So I hope again that this cracked some seals for you and helped you realize maybe it's important to look back through your life and see how these micro and macro awakenings have happened for you, how it's brought you to be who you are, and how you can use that to move forward, because that's what this is all about. It's always about how we're going to move forward. So I hope this helped you. I want to extend an invitation to you to ask any questions. You can email me, you can ask questions on any social media, and I would love to hear your thoughts about this as well. I'd also like to hear your stories about awakening. So light and love to all of you. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will be back soon with more. Take care.